Hello, everybody. My name is Timothy Gager, and welcome to Virtual Thursdays Dire Literary Series. And tonight, our guest and our highly recommended guest is Ellis Elliott. And let me tell you a little bit about Ellis. And she is a perennial student of nature, inner realms, and the wisdom of the body. She writes to bear witness and disentangle the world as she perceives it. Basically, she is a writer, a ballet teacher, facilitator of the online writing groups called Bewilderness Writing. She has a blended family of 6 grown sons, lives with her husband and a feisty dog. Mabel, I always call the dog Juno, in Juno Beach, Florida. She has an MFA from Queen's University, and she has a book, which is Break in the Field, which free on Kindle Unlimited. Paperback is, very, very reasonable. And so maybe folks will hear Ellis, you'll run out and click on something and buy the book, because that's why we're here, folks. And also to provide entertainment and wonderful poetry. So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Ellis Elliott.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me tonight. And what a build up there. I do hope you go out and buy the book. Get me up to maybe 25 for my total. But anyway, my book, the name of the book is Break in the Field. And that comes from the epigraph of the book, a quote from another book. And I want to begin, before I read any of the poems, to just read that to you and give you a little background. So the quote is from a book called, a little tome called The History of Disability. And the quote is, "An encounter with disability inaugurates a break in the observer's perceptual field, a tear in our being that reveals the body's open-endedness, its incompleteness, its precariousness." So that is referencing what the rest of the book is about, which is specifically about my remarriage in my mid-40s to a man with 3 sons, one of which was profoundly disabled, can walk, talk, or feed himself. But also, in a more general way, it refers to the things that we're constantly confronted with that change the shape of our world, that shift the way we see things, our perception. And we have to figure out how to reconnect back with the world. And those things can be like having a special needs stepson, or any kind of trauma or a major life shift. And so that's what these poems in my collection are about. Primarily my son Julian. And so I'll start at the beginning with the first poem from the book, and it's called Hemorrhage. How the word looks like bumper cars of crashing consonants, like sandpaper on the ears of your skin, like a John Cage song made from dead fish on piano strings, rubber ducks, and ice in a blender, like bad tap water in a foreign country, like carbonated bubbles up your nose, like teeth on teeth, like a surprise party gone wrong. Next one I'm going to read. I'm sorry, these can be a little bit of a downer. They're not really lighthearted or love poems or sentimental. Some. This one is called "Come Lay Your Hands." Begins again, another quote. Jesus changes everything. Joyce Meyer, televangelist, except Julian's diaper. Tim, father of 17-year-old Julian, who cannot walk, talk, or feed himself. Oh, come lay your hands upon him. Speak in tongues and song and ancient words. Bring your creed, your rituals, your holy smoke and incense. Raise him high, kneel down low, rock him in your arms, bow at his feet, baptize him in water, anoint him in oil, lift him up, sit him in a sweat lodge, print his name on the list, circle up and phone tree him with prayer. Let that prayer grow loud and enormous, a monster to envelop everything in its path, Place pins in him that correspond with systems, both spiritual and physical. Join your words, your thoughts, your prayers into a groundswell of unity. Email this list to your 7 best friends. Don't walk under a ladder or look in a cracked mirror, but do pick up a penny, pick the number 7, read from your books, scriptures, and verses, chant and ring bells. Give it your best shot. Oh, harness your codified, swirled circles of energy that pop across eternity, cacophonous and unwieldy as Godzilla in downtown New York City. Let them rain down in snowflakes upon his face, blanket him in paper confetti of prayers, and tears turned whispers in his ear. Be sure no one is looking when you tell him the truth. You are powerless and cannot change him. He has changed you. Okay, let's move right along. Nureyev at the Orpheum, Memphis, 1987. 2 men sat in the row in front of me near the aisle. One, in a sapphire cardigan, had his arm around the other, pulling him close as they both sobbed. We were watching Nureyev, who was nearing 50 then and known as one of the greatest ballet dancers of all time. I was young, just out of college, and didn't understand their tears. I thought it could be because the famous Russian defector was past his prime, his coil and spring less precise, and the flagrant fling of his crimson cape imperceptibly off tempo. Or it might have been the nearness of beauty, the push and pull of legend etched in every articulated muscle. Now, as my body begins its slow defection, I sit between those 2 men. I rest my head on one free shoulder as we all feel the cape of our aging bodies begin to slip to the scratched wooden stage floor and into a puddle of what lies between beauty and loss. It is a place so beautiful, I weep. Static. In science fiction movies about aliens, the experts look for patterns in the zigzag of high and low sound frequencies on computer screens. Julian cannot talk, but his father says his noises are like this: loud, staccato burst at first, then slow, sustained notes as he turns his head to his inner tempo. In movies, sounds from aliens call us through static clicks and trills meant to be mysterious codes destined for translation. A murmur, like the half-heard conversation at the table next to yours, or the unknown messages sent through roots between trees. There is always the desire to glean meaning or find something more. From pulsed whale calls, dolphin chatter, and bird song, we cobble understanding. What we perceive as stay away or come near comes down to I am here. Okay. New Mellory. This poem came from a Thanksgiving I spent at an abbey in Iowa. Their voices lifted and ricocheted off the cold stone walls of the abbey as Trappist monks sang at services 7 times a day. They lined each side like perfect white teeth, and the slant of sun struck arches of leaded glass to bounce back in swirls off the black granite altar. Outside my sparse room of metal bed and beveled window panes, diligent snow-covered cornfields stood guard. I had come seeking order, a certain solace found in ritual, and devotion dressed in crisp robes. My own life was a simmering litany of unsatisfied appetites, always too much and never enough. I craved belief like theirs, strong enough to rise at 3 a.m. and to sing, Guests were invited, so I shook sleep and sent off like a bear resting itself from hibernation and joined them. My animal self was not gone, but restless and ravenous. I sent my voice high, like a long dormant hymn, more growl than song. Okay, one more. Um, on the eve of my son's early onset schizophrenia exam, the plumage of my devotion unfurls inside a canopy of tangled tree branches. My ragged wings reach to hide the moss covered nest of my son's shiny eccentricities. My delicate spine curls to cover his disparate offerings, scraps of tinfoil, gold nib of fountain pen, and the shifting hues of a hummingbird feather. He hears them, insistent shards of sound coming closer, voices circling and lifting from roots below. The funnel clouds of chatter rise. With your small body tucked beneath mine, I take off while I still think we can outrun this, while my talons clutch your soft belly so tight they draw blood. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellis. That was great. And I got a few questions, and there are a few questions in the chat, but I'll weed through those. You don't have to look at them.
Okay.
So your book came out fairly recently. Tell me a little bit something about the publisher. I mean, I was at their website, the Devil's Party Press. They seem very interesting and unique in a lot of ways. How did you find that?
Interestingly, it was very random in that I had been through graduate school and really worked on this poetry collection and another one, and I was sick of poetry. And I thought, I'm going to try my hand at something else. And so I dove into a novel and thought, I need somebody to look at this. So I happened to find um, this Devil's Party Press. I did not know the woman, Diane Pierce, who I found first, had anything to do with the press. I just knew she was an editor and soliciting her services on a writers group that I was a part of. So I got on with that, and then we learned about each other. She learned I was a poet, and then I really got lucky because they are number one, a publisher that focuses on writers 40 and over. And so that was great, first of all. And also, she decided, Diane and her husband Dave run the company, um, decided to begin a poetry collective. And Robert, who's present, might be able to help me with this as well. But they started a collective of people that they know that were writers, and they might write fiction and whatever else, but they also were poets. And once we had this collective together, they decided they were going to publish our poetry and have us do a little lottery system, a numerical random drawing, in order to see who got to go first. And so, guess who got to go first? I did, and I was ready to get out of that starting gate because I had been working on my collection for a long time. So, and you ask about the publishers themselves, they have a number of different imprints that includes crime. And Robert, please help me. If you can help me with this one, I know there's crime, and they have an anthology that includes horror. They also have a horror imprint. Come on.
No, it's okay. We don't need to quiz.
Okay.
People can check it out. It's
Okay.
Devil's
All right.
Party Press, but it's certainly not a run of the mill press. It sounds
Oh,
like.
no. No, they're very hard working and give a lot of attention to anyone that is really dedicated to the craft. And yes, they are small but mighty.
That sounds awesome. So my question is, so you worked on a novel. I know that you also have written some short stories. So tell me a little bit, like, do you use the same subject matters in your short stories as you do in your poems? And when you do, are you able to map out the stories of the novels in your head, or do you map them out basically on the page?
No, I don't have the same subjects at all. In fact, that's my escape. Poetry tends, as you could hear, that was certainly real life. The, in the weeds of everyday life, as opposed to my fiction, which is very escapist, and I try to get as far from reality. Well, not science fiction, maybe, or fabulism, but I do try to just go into a completely inhabit a completely different world. And I kind of let it organically grow. I'm a big on free writing. And that is what my little writing group that I run, Bewilderness Writing, is about. I'm just going to vomit it on the page and let it go and just get it out, whatever the story is, as long as I possibly can, and then try to go back and figure out what's working and what's not working. And that I don't do that all the time. I do make an outline occasionally when I get confused or try to figure out what the next step is, but for the most part, I just run with the story and the next idea and the next idea, and then go back 100 times.
Well, facilitating this online writing group that you have, the Bewilderness Writing, how long has it been in existence, and can anyone join?
Thank you for asking that. Yes, anyone can join, and you do not have to have any writing experience whatsoever. I've done this group with a program with the formerly homeless folks, with young teenage women, and also just my online group, whoever signs up. And it's a small group, and it's free. It's free writing that's guided through poetry. So I read a poem, then I give you jump off lines, and then you may or may not choose one of those. You may Something else may have hit you, and then you just free write for like 10 minutes. I cue you, and then everyone, the groups are very small, like 6 or 7 people, reads what they've written. There's no comment or critique. We simply acknowledge each other and keep going. And it's pretty awesome, I think, that the kind of fabric that we create in conversation without ever talking to each other. Obviously, we do. We ignite chat at the beginning and end, but just in the writing that we do, what comes of that? So that's what Bewilderness is.
All right, I'm going to read a question from Robert. How does your experience with ballet affect or influence you as a writer?
Oh, that's a good one. Well, ballet choreography is very much like form poetry. There is a specific design, clearly, spatially, and I have to fit the steps in a particular way. So I find a lot of parallels in that particular way. But another one is ballet is so precise and so dedicated to the technical aspect of it that I find that I'm really persnickety when it comes to the technical aspect of my own poetry. It's like, is that foot pointed as much as it possibly can be through the toe? And I feel like I do that with the words probably too much. Try to pick it apart a little bit.
So D. Allen asks, and I'm going to sort of morph his question a bit because he's asking, what made you take up poetry as your means of self-expression? And we've already discussed that you do more than poetry. So I'm going to ask you, what in the poetry form makes it more about your life and about your expression versus other forms?
Oh, that is a good question. Um, about form poetry versus
The form and the genre, the form of poetry. What makes it so? What makes the for you accelerate? Making it more about your life.
I think that's the has to do a lot with the poets that influenced me seemed very much like storytellers that were telling stories of their lives, but then only afterwards, when I was much older, did I understand that there was the hidden form behind that was part of the craft of poetry, that I didn't immediately see that was a pantoum or whatever it was, whatever form it was. So as part of it is the traditions that I probably was first learned poetry in, and then I also think it just distills the language so that if talking is, um, I'd much rather move my body to express myself or write it down than have to talk like I'm doing right now. So if I'm going to talk about myself, I like that I can distill it down into the least amount of words to make it as powerful as I can. So that's sort of answering your question.
So RJ asks, was there a singular moment or event in your life when you decided I must be a poet and writer?
Yeah, well, I started out of college as a high school English teacher, and I wrote in college and worked for the college literary magazine and things like that. But was very much I knew not to try to pursue that as a career. I hadn't been told I was particularly talented at all. So, but I kept writing, kept it to myself, and then about 40ish, 40, I had a series of life events that I ended up just it was like the lid came off, and I couldn't help but write. And I remember, and I had to do a high school report once with the poet Miller Williams. I interviewed him, and he said, it's not that you want to write, it's that you must write. And that happened to me at that stage of my life. It was the only way I could figure out this complicated kid, the deaths of my parents, and variety of other stuff I was dealing with, was to write it down.
So do you feel, is it still for you, is it still as cathartic?
Absolutely. Yes. Yes.
So there's a line in your poem about your stepson. And so my question is, how has he changed you? And not just in your writing now, how has it changed you and maybe reflected upon your writing?
That's another great question, because that's all he can do is change me. He has no affect, so he doesn't laugh or cry. So all of your interaction with Julian is about you. It's not about him. He's not going to talk to you or tell you anything. You are projecting the whole time. So he has profoundly changed me in that I have tried to understand and wrap my head around not only disability and the huge learning curve of trying to understand the special needs world, but also, what does it mean to be human? I had come from this dance background about the body and these sons that ran track and all of this, and I have this completely physically disabled stepson. And what he taught me without saying a word was how inconsequential all of these external things that we place so much importance on really are. I think it's what he brings out in you. He's not saying anything or creating anything. He just makes you think, and that's what he made me think.
Now, is there anything that he indicates, or any way that he indicates any preferences, or does he have any movements that you notice? In other words, are you able to tell his likes and his dislikes?
No, no, he can pad. The best we've been able to gather from the various tests and so on that he's had is that his developmental age is about 9 months. So he'll pick up an object and drop it, just like a baby does. And so we don't really have any way of knowing. When he gets agitated, he moves his head and makes noises. And what's interesting is that different caregivers, babysitters, whoever, relationships will read into that. Oh, he's telling me this. Oh, this means he likes so and so or doesn't like. When in fact, when you live with Julian, there is not a pattern there. So we really don't know. It's a complete mystery.
Have you been able to write in Julian's point of view? Have you tried that?
I, you know, it's a fine line in the world of special needs to take on his voice in the politically correct world can get me in a lot of trouble, and it has before, so that I have sort of recoiled. And I, in fact, have one of my poems is Anthem for the Man Who Said I Crossed the Line, which you can hear a lot of when you, even just in writing about Julian, let alone trying to write in his voice, I'll get pushback. Don't you think that's assuming too much, or don't you think,
But
yeah.
aren't you doing it as an act of love, correct? And don't you feel like saying, I mean, as a writer, sometimes you feel like saying, how dare you tell me what to write? But isn't this more of how dare you tell me how to parent?
Exactly. And it's who is the morality police here? It's language. It has to do with the words you're choosing. And if anyone can choose words for him or for me about him, it's me. So yes, I definitely push back on that, and it hasn't stopped me. But to answer your specific question, I think I have maybe one or two that are from, as if they were from his point of view. Um, and that's as close as I get.
Yeah, I find that what you just said is kind of like I would never consider like walking into a McDonald's and telling a parent, "Hey, you're feeding him food that's unhealthy." Like it's like the nerve and the gall of that is just, well, we can talk about that for a while. I want to talk more about your writing, even though I get sucked into the interest of what we were talking about. So yeah, overactive imagination. It sounds like a lot of your poems are reeled in. So, and it also sounds to me like your stories can be magical realist in a way. So, what's the most far-reaching work of your overactive imagination?
Oh my goodness. I wasn't prepared for that. Oh, this is not going to be as fun as you think it's going to be for an answer. But um, I am, I have a hobby of miniatures. So
Like your book cover.
yes, that's one of my houses. So I flip dollhouse. So I have a thing about little tiny creatures and not people. There are no people inhabiting this particular world, but little tiny creatures that exist outside of our particular world of perception or whatever. And that's kind of the farthest I get out.
So how long? So I just scanned your cover while you were talking, and for folks to see. And there's what, did you actually paste the wallpaper in the miniature house?
Well, you can tape it or paste it. I change it a lot, so I don't glue it in there. I tend to use, they have all sorts of great adhesives out there that you can put it in there and then take it out. It's easy
So if you want to,
separate.
so if you want to paint, you don't have to steam it off, the mini steamer.
No. Sometimes you do. Sometimes you do. But oh, somebody flips doll houses. How great! Yeah, sometimes it is like a 30-year-old dollhouse, and somebody has glued that paper on there, and you're in there with a little tiny roll with the little pin things in there trying to get it off.
Now, have you ever felt like yelling out, "Move that Matchbox bus"?
Yeah. Yes. Oh my gosh, that's a great. I need to add Matchbox to my world.
There you go, Ellis. It was a pleasure jumping into your world and hearing your work and listening to your answers. Now, let me show you the book one more time. Here it is. It's called Break in the Field. This is what it looks like on Amazon. Now, I'm not endorsing Amazon. Just buy the book wherever you would normally buy a book. It's a wonderful book. It's got 37 ratings, 5.0 stars. It doesn't look like this. Oh, this one. Here it is. Who is that person?
I don't know. I need to hunt them down. I don't.
Thank you once again.
Must be the one I didn't pay.
Thank you once again, Ellis. And for
Thank
folks
you.
that are watching the stream or listening to the stream on Facebook tonight and not in the Zoom group, thank you very much for tuning in. If you would like to come join us for the open mic right now, just jump on the link that's in that group and I will let you in. Ellis, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Tim. Appreciate it.